We're back. I'm speaking with former federal finance minister Joe Oliver, and we're discussing the federal budget. Joe, how do you think this is going to affect foreign investment in Canada?
Well, this is exacerbating the lack of competitiveness that Canada has in attracting and retaining capital. We have a capital flight problem, and that has directly impacted in a negative way on our productivity, which, as you know, is in a state of crisis. Productivity can be measured in a number of ways, but the GDP per capita, which is an indication of personal prosperity, has been pretty well flat since the Trudeau government took office. And it just means that people are not keeping up with inflation. Many of them are falling behind, and we as a country are falling behind other wealthy nation competitors. The OECD did a study of the 38 wealthiest countries in the world and concluded over the next 40 years, Canada will rank dead last in productivity improvement. In other words, we're going to decline relative to every other advanced economy in the entire world. And part of the reason for that is that capital is not coming in to the country. I mean, our workers are just as smart and just as hardworking as the American workers are, but they are only 72% as productive. And the reason for that is that governments, or I should say companies, are not investing in plant and equipment to the same extent that the Americans are. And the reason they aren't, in large part, is because they aren't able to attract the capital internally or from external sources. So when Americans see that our capital gains rate is up again, and that corporate taxes generally are higher than in the United States, as are individual taxes, they're discouraged from investing in Canada. I mean, after all, they first are going to invest in their own country, and they might, by exception, invest elsewhere as part of diversification. But if the tax rate is higher, that's just one additional negative element, and it's a serious problem for Canada's economic growth and prosperity.
Absolutely. And I can tell you from experience, when you explain this to Americans, the changes in our capital gains, they are absolutely gobsmacked. They cannot believe that legislation passed. So let's drill down on what the impacts of this legislation on the Canadian economy, especially on the resource sector and on manufacturing. Can you enlighten us a little bit about that?
Well, what it's going to do is tax at a higher inclusion rate all corporations and individuals for amounts above $250,000 a year, and so it's just going to make it more difficult for companies to make capital decisions, to retain capital, to be as profitable, and then therefore to expand, hire more people, and pay wages. It's going to mean less competitiveness. We're just not going to do as well as we otherwise would, and it's going to have an unfair impact on people depending on circumstances. I mean, look, you know that some people are fortunate to have very large pensions. People working for the federal government have their pensions indexed, but a lot of people don't have that benefit, and so they have to save for retirement. Well, these are people who are going to be disproportionately disadvantaged by the capital gains tax increase. So it's really a very negative thing. You know, there are a number of pillars to prosperity, and small government, less regulation, and lower taxes, you know, along with a sound monetary system and free trade are the key pillars of prosperity, as Arthur Laffer, the economist and creator of the Laffer curve, pointed out. So, you know, we've got a government that is undermining all five of the pillars. And the one we're talking about is a competitive and fair tax rate, which unfortunately, this goes counter to in a major way.
Well, amen to that. We're going to need to go to break now. More with former federal finance minister Joe Oliver when we return to Canadian Innovators. Don't go away.